This is a picture of the reigning diva at the turn of the century, Sissieretta Jones, otherwise known as the Black Patti. When Sissieretta Jones arrived on the scene, she had a very interesting opportunity. There were two existing paradigms, if you will, to go in terms of doing the work of a singer, especially a gifted singer. You could go in the paradigm of the difficult but economic behemoth that existed post-Reconstruction, which was the Jim Crow era of minstrelsy, or you could go in the area that was popular, let's say, a earlier Negro vogue, if I can use that term, that happened right around the end of the war, so early Reconstruction, where the Fisk Jubilee singers were coming into being, the land-grant colleges were coming into being, and a focus on the Negro folk song was an option. So, yes, that in fact happened. Sissieretta Jones did, in fact, go forward like the Fisk Jubilee singers and toured heavily into Europe, sang for kings and queens of Europe, had patrons and patronages who just thought she was incredible. But she, like the Fisk Jubilee singers, had a challenge as soon as Jim Crow became the reigning paradigm for the South, for the degradation of what we could as a people be looked at, and what was popularized, if you will, by the entertainment industry and by the hatred and the sense of wanting to keep us as slaves. We had to deal with that, and unfortunately, although Sissieretta wanted to do what the Fisk Jubilee singers had done and the Williams Colored singers and all of the other ensembles who were doing the art of our song as a slave and as a Negro people, what happened further was that simply the minstrelsy world won out. And you'll see in this series of images that I'm showing in StarBright are all part of my archive. They're all originals. And what you see is a challenge. I'm going to move forward here. Here's Black Patti. This is a very rare piece. Black Patti Musical Comedy Company. That in itself tells you a whole lot. Black Patti is a gifted opera singer. A gifted opera singer who wanted to be known and wanted to be respected and revered, but yet had to deal with this existing behemoth. In the 1890s, in the early 1900s, all the way to right before and end of World War I, the whole interest was in degrading this mockery of what it was to be black. Everybody, unfortunately, to survive, seemed to have to get into it. That's unfortunately revealed by this. Black Patti Musical Comedy Company, Sissieretta Jones, the original Black Patti, and 40 others, are getting into, I'm going to go to the next slide, are getting into what we find here are the mockery shows. For example, this is let me just go back for a second. This is the Freeman. This is one of the first and rarest, what was called an illustrated colored newspaper. It was based in Indianapolis. This is from 1901, and in this particular paper, there was quite a bit of mention and talk of the African American, or basically the colored opera companies, Will Marion Cook being one of them, having a very large one. He is engaged in in a review called The Cannibal King. That's mentioned in this slide here, and it talks about all the famous people that are involved with it. Bob Cole, Ernest Hogan, interestingly enough, before he transcribed Negro folk songs to aka Negro spirituals, you have Rosamond Johnson, a part of this larger minstrel show. Now this is Will Marion Cook's minstrel company. Sissieretta, as I've just shown it previously, Sissieretta Jones, a Black Patti, has her own version of it. What these gifted individuals, conscious singers, did within the setting of these mockery shows is they found moments to showcase their art. So the Black Patti sang arias that were celebrated by the kings and queens of Europe. You know, she was able to keep that sense of dignity, even though it was difficult for her. Because in the larger picture, people weren't really there to see her. They were there to see all of the blackface, all of the fun, the mockery, etc., so forth. So from this paper, it's really interesting because of the fact that there's so much about this. Okay, so Will Marion Cook's opera company is doing The Cannibal King. Another company in Providence, Rhode Island, is doing Lady Africa. Yet another one is doing, what is it called, Holiday in Coontown. Again, the reigning idea. So we go forward, and another ad who involves Ragtime Opera Company, looking for colored ladies and gentlemen who could double in brass, basically do two things. It was almost like like a Hollywood thing. You can sing, dance, and shoot bubble gum, if you will. So also going forward in the same time period that Black Patti had, and others who were trying to basically take, if you will, what we're talking about today. Look at the essence of the African and African-American dignified experience and look at songs, telling our stories through our voices. We had this juxtaposition, again, of this behemoth that if you wanted to survive, you had to go this other direction. Collins and Harlan, turn the century, not ragtime, but I'm gonna say basically, minstrel, kind of blackface team, recorded tons and tons of records for Victor. Why do I have this recording in showcasing this and a couple of other slides coming? Because of the fact that, like, I agree with several Hollywood celebrities that it's important to document our history. This was a difficult time. Here we're talking about a Black Patti and a Madame Salika who would want to sing in musicales the art songs, even art songs written by Will Marion Cook, who was writing at the time, but yet this was what people were buying and thinking about our experience. Here is a very difficult, very rare piece that I have. I'll carve that nigger when we meet. There's a story behind it, which I won't go into. Done by Flo Irvine. The next slide is the Bully Song, a crazed African-American with a open, basically, ratchet to kill somebody. This is signed by May Irwin. May Irwin and Flo Irwin were the reigning queens of the coon song. This is popular music that you could buy in the Examiner and newspapers at the turn of the century. So it was a difficult road. How can you be a concert singer and have a sense of dignity, and yet you have this going on? Well, the good news is that we did have, as I've already mentioned, Will Marion Cook. Will Marion Cook was able to get published in, this particular example is the San Francisco Examiner, and it is from, I believe, 1900. Will Marion Cook has written a song called Good Evening, a real native Southern Negro melody with the words by a collaboration, essentially, of Paul Laurence Dunbar and Will Marion Cook. This is one of the earliest statements of an effort to reclaim a sense of dignity, juxtaposed to this other thing. What was going on in the South, what was going on the East Coast, what was going on in the Midwest, was all of the other things that we've seen so far. But here we have emerging past that, this desire to be where we are today, where we are here at this conference. So, just a couple of examples. Going forward, juxtaposed to all this, is the West Coast. San Francisco, pioneering, the pioneering West, the Wild West. San Francisco in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s, especially by the 1880s, 1890s, and going into 1900, saw itself as it grew to be an urbane, East Coast, Eastern city in the best sense of the word, and a city that appreciated all of what would be considered European. That's how, for example, this is the Cliff House, the famous Cliff House bathhouse, and that was unfortunately burned down, but this is a major destination at the turn of the century. San Francisco at this time had all manner of small ensemble groups, all musicians, all professionals, the professional dentists, the professional doctors that were musicians who loved to get together and do musicals. in San Francisco during the 1890s through the early 1900s, through the time of the Great Earthquake, there were African Americans. How they came there were from various different, stories. That's a whole other story. All this, but there was a small cadre of African Americans living in the Bay Area at the time of 1900, before the earthquake in 1906, that were able, if they chose to, because of the fact that San Francisco African Americans at that time, a small number, managed somehow to be integrated into the overall, I'm going to say, the overall social network in the arts, unlike what was possible, for example, for African Americans anywhere else. It was unusual. Certainly there was racism in San Francisco. That's been greatly documented. It's most clearly in the Chinese situation, with Chinese Americans. The city has not had the best history with that. But San Francisco was an urban place. This was the what did Sarah Fahrenheit said in 1900, that this was the Paris of the West. And so what you're seeing here is actually a program detail of Carmen from April 17, 1906. Caruso had come with the Metropolitan Opera Company to San Francisco to perform, and this is the Palace Hotel, which was one of the great, glorious destinations of culture, and this was the place to be seen, and to enjoy. And this was typical of what was going on in San Francisco.